group, as you could tell last night. Some people were more social than others last night. Anyway, um, like I said, this is the ninth annual conference. Just some history about it for people who don't know. David Bauer and I started this conference 9 years ago with about 20 people. We have over 350 associates around the country. Very proud of that, and it's really because of you all that spread the word for us. Anyway, I'm just some housekeeping item. You have the agenda in front of you, or you have a book, so I don't need to read that to you. We all can read. One thing that we're doing something different is that we are trying to write a book for people, about people with cerebral palsy, and we have about 6 chapters. And what I did this year is I asked my friend Mary if Mary would come forward and get up here with me. I asked Mary to be a scribe this year. And what a scribe to me is somebody that will sit down with you for 45 minutes and listen to you. This is Mary. I went to college with her, so I've known her for a long, long time. Anyway, I want you to think about what issue in your life could you talk about to Mary and let her type it out, and we could send it to editor, and she would put it into a story. I'm not talking about chronological. I was born in 1962 as a blue baby. You know, I'm not talking about that stuff. I'm talking about specific issues in your life that would change somebody else's life if they read about it. So we have a sign-up sheet out there, blocks of time that you can have Mary for 45 minutes. Wow, 45, that's a long time. Can I sign up? Anyway, so we're doing that this year. I'm so excited about that because I think we can get some good stories, because none of us like to write about each other, write about ourselves, but we all like to talk about ourselves. So that's a little bit different than writing about ourselves. I'm going to start the conference by introducing Dr. Karen Pape. She's got many hats, but she's from Toronto, Canada. She called me about 6 months ago. We had about a 2-hour conversation, and we fell in love with each other. And I asked her to come down to this conference, and she really, really, really was very generous and said yes. So Karen, without any ado, I'm just going to turn it right over to you and let you do your stuff. Dr. Karen Pape.
Thank you. Well, I'm delighted to be back in Washington. I haven't been here forever. How many of you are sort of native Washington area? And who's come the farthest? California? Oh, that's pretty amazing. Well, I'm going to talk to you today. You don't know me from Adam. I was a neonatologist. I did neuroscience before I went into medicine. Then I did pediatrics, and then I was a neonatologist. Took care of little babies with birth injuries. And then I gradually morphed into rehab. Then I morphed into technology development. And now I'm clinically retired, so you're safe. You don't have to come and see me. But I'm writing a book on baby brain neuroplasticity and how brains get better. Because I've found over the many years that I've been in this field that a lot of what we were taught way back when, in the beginning, about cerebral palsy is incorrect. New knowledge has changed what we think. Cerebral palsy is still the commonest brain injury in childhood, and there's one new diagnosis an hour in the United States. There's been a big difference in the type of cerebral palsy. Athetoid cerebral palsy with movement disorder is much less common than it used to be. I would say probably 70% of kids with CP now have spastic diplegia or spastic hemiplegia. But the overall incidence is still pretty high. Now, you and your parents were told when you were born that brain injury is permanent and irreversible. How many of you were told that your brain damage was there and there really was nothing that could be done about it? Well, that is an old theory. And it was the theory that I was taught when I went to medical school. We were all taught that brain damage is permanent. But about 20 years ago, people started to realize that that was not true. And they first showed change in brains in animals, and then they gradually moved it to humans. We now know, especially with functional brain scans, that human brains, even old, deteriorating old brains like mine, can grow new brain cells. They can rewire if we learn something new, and they can reallocate functions. But babies and children are not like adults. And this is the sad part. If I have a stroke, I fall down in front of you now and I have a stroke and I'm left with a hemiplegia. And it's a mild hemiplegia, okay? I would expect full recovery because at one point in my life, I was healthy. But if I have a small child who's got exactly the same mild stroke, they have it for life. Now, does that make sense? No. How can an old brain do better than a young brain? And that's what I'm going to talk about today. Because it used to drive me crazy to see kids who actually had mild CP have it for life. And I finally worked it out. What we're really seeing is that the baby brain is recovering. It actually recovers better than adult brains, but early habits hide it. Now, some of you know Christine Rouse, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, but I've been working with Christine for about 3-4 years now. And this is Christine's walk. And it's a fairly characteristic walk, and she's got, everybody would agree, a fairly significant balance and coordination problem. Everybody okay with that? This is Christine playing tennis. She's got a ball machine, and her forehand volley is actually better than mine. Now, Christine walks onto the tennis court in the same way that you just saw, but when she's playing tennis, her tennis stance is perfectly normal. And it's not just CP. This is Jenna, a little girl who has a brachial plexus injury. She was born with her left arm paralyzed. And she learned this very abnormal way of lifting her arm up. And you don't have to be a doctor to see that and say, okay, her left arm isn't lifting up and her right arm is. Everybody with me? Okay. This is Jenna. Same day, same kid, same outfit, no change. I asked her to do jumping jacks. What happened to her arm lift? Okay? All I did was change the instruction from lift your arm to do jumping jacks, and she can do it. Now, Christine's bad walk and Jenna's bad lift are habits. It's how they learn to do things when their nerve was damaged, or when Christine's case, when her brain was damaged and in the process of recovery. What they're showing when they do later skills is recovered brain that comes out because it's challenged to come out. So Jenna can lift her arm. You just have to know how to get her to do it. Early habits hide recovery. Because you learn all those early movements with an immature, damaged brain or nerve, and the later skills come with a recovered brain, to whatever extent it can recover, and with a more mature brain. You know, you can't teach a 3-year-old, no matter how talented they're going to be, you can't teach a 3-year-old to play tennis. You know, the babies can't even catch a ball, let alone hit it with a racket. But you do the same child 3 or 4 years later, and they have a whole new skill set. Now, I have to this whole talk is getting you to think differently. So how many of you see the young lady? And how many see the old lady? And the rest of you are blind? Come on, pick. Do you see the old lady or the young lady? And so how many see both? Good for you. You see, you're the open-minded ones that I'm going to be able to talk to. This is focusing on the young lady, and she's looking back over her shoulder. Can you see her now looking back over her shoulder? Everybody can see her? And this is focusing on the old lady looking forward to my left. Now keep your eye on her, and then she's still there. So it's really important that you learn to see both. So this is the old lady's nose and her mouth and her chin, and she's looking at me. This is the young lady's eyelash, her nose, and her chin, and she's looking backwards over her shoulder. So now I want you all, first of all, I want you to see the old lady, now the young lady. Now the old lady, now the young lady. And what you have to realize is that nothing is changing on the slide. It's only what you expect to see. Okay? Now, how many of you see a half full glass of water? And how many see a half empty? Okay? Now, it's interesting. They've done studies that those of you who saw the old lady first also tend to see a half-empty glass of water. And those of you positive types that saw the young lady first tend to see a half-full glass of water. The challenge that I'm giving you is to realize that we see what we expect to see, and I want you to see beyond that expected range. And the way to do that is to catch them doing it right. Now, you people have all lived with CP or with a family member that has CP or caregiver. And you all know that if you catch people doing it right, you can see higher level function sneaking out from behind the habit. Everybody who can walk independently has got a better walk that they do when they're really trying hard, and they have a sloppy walk that you do when you're not. All of you who've got a speech problem know that there's a difference between your best speech and your worst speech, okay? Now, when I started working with Christine, her best speech was 80 to 90% intelligible. Everybody in the world could understand her, and without a mic, Christine could project when she's on the stage. She actually acts now and sings on the stage. But when Christine was nervous, when Christine was tense or tired, her speech fell apart into nothingness. Now, why do I want you to think in your own life about what you can do really well and what you can do not so well? Because this difference, this range of behavior between your best and your worst can be changed just by becoming more consistent. If you can speak well anytime, you can learn to speak well all the time. If you can control your hand well at any time, you can learn how. Because the best skills that you're showing are the index of how much your brain recovered. Okay, so without any new brain, if you just become more consistent, you can be better. And the interesting thing about neuroplasticity is it shows two things: that there's more recovery there than you thought there was, and you can train your brain to recover even more. David, so is this going to pick up sound? I'm sorry, I didn't plug in for sound. It will? Great. So this is Sabrina, who has spastic athetoid CP, and she's just going to talk. She was part of a research study that I did 20 years ago. Oops. Let me just get her started. No, it's not coming. Can we just take a CP break for a second? Fixed position, and she only can use one hand, and she can't use it very emotionally. So she was part of a research study, and I'll tell you in a minute what we did with her. But this is the same person 6 months later. And I want you to listen to her speech fluency, and most particularly how many breaths per, how many words per breath she comes out with.
I'm going to give seminars about how I think teaching should be in a special education school, because if you ask me if I should go back the way it is now, they're not enhancing the students' capability, you're focusing on the students' incapability, and that doesn't improve your self-esteem, it just brings it down.
And how about your self-esteem now?
Well, I like myself a lot more, and I don't get as frustrated because I feel better, I'm more understood, I'm more relaxed. I can do more for myself now.
Wow. Okay. I have yet to meet a person with a speech disability who can't have that degree of improvement in about 6 months. But it takes specific training. What we changed in Sabrina rather, was an increase in her core strength, increase in her respiratory volume, and she went from 4 to 6 words per breath to 14 to 16 words per breath. And as her teacher said, her IQ went up.